All right, so JP Rindfleisch here with Lisa Young. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, JP.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So you've done one of these before, but I'm curious how has it been since then, and how's your writing journey been as we've kind of progressed?
Sure, sure. Well, I've been working with Laura Hum on this book, and I'm, I don't know, I'm learning a lot and just trying to apply everything and working really hard. I'd love to have the whole draft finished this year. Um, it's my first book, so it's been a long journey, but I'm still very excited for it.
Good, good. Yeah, you sent me over some information about this, chapter summaries and other bits. I'm curious, what would you like to walk away from this meeting with?
That's a great question. I think the my biggest focus would be on the team that I have, like the cast of characters in the first part of Act Two, because I feel like everybody. I mean, Nora's her own um, anchor. Nora's her own
Hmm.
anchor, and everybody around her is an engine. And I'm just wondering if that works, or if that's going to get boring. Or, I'd love to just look at that cast of characters and see what my
Okay.
options are.
Yeah. All right. Um, Sounds good. Let's dive in. I'm gonna share my screen. And of course, because one of your first questions was story hypothesis, and I think that that's a good starting off point.
Mhm.
Um, I do kind of want to talk about what your original one was, what you think it might be, and then maybe some of my opinions if you'd like them.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so originally, you had Nora's desire for understanding, leading her to fulfill a need for participation by means of protection. So, a story like this would be Nora trying to understand something until midway through, using this sort of protection as a stepping off point where whenever she protects, she kind of gets closer and closer to her goal. But halfway through, she learns whatever she needs to learn in terms of understanding, and then things start shifting gears into a participation where we ultimately lead into an ending where she gets the sense of community and connectedness. Um, then here you kind of are suggesting maybe it's a shift. Maybe she has this desire for protection, and that leads her to fulfill participation by means of identity. In this case, we have sort of Nora's need to shield, protect, do whatever. And in this case, it's a lot about her brother, protecting him from others, and this development of who she is and her identity, and leaning into that will lead her, one, to discover that maybe that protection isn't the best thing halfway through, and then also leading out into the more she discovers about herself, the more that she can become part of a community
Mhm.
later on.
Mhm.
Um, I I agree that original one, based off of the information that I had, I don't know if I agree and I disagree.
Mhm.
And I think part of it is like the nine initial needs, or the nine needs themselves are just focus points. I think that anything that resonates with you is what is important. It's kind of like your guiding star.
Mhm.
But from your story map, we
Mhm.
have a couple of things that I found or I picked out. We have Nora wanting to cure her brother's memory problems, or she wants to protect him from this progressive neurological decline.
Mhm.
So this sounds like someone who is maybe trying to understand these memory problems, or maybe someone that's trying to create something here that is a preventative. Is
Mhm.
that the case? Is she like a researcher, or like
Mhm.
what is she doing in the beginning of the story?
Yes. So Nora's she's a neuroscientist and she's
Hmm.
working at the Creative Brain Institute. And her project is to cure um, like something along the lines of like an early dementia, like a progressive dementia
Hmm.
from head
Hmm.
injuries. That's what she thinks is her brother's problem.
Hmm.
it's not actually the true problem is something that she won't discover until probably book two
Yeah,
would be my guess. But that's what she's doing. And this is before the inciting incident.
yeah.
Um,
Okay. So what I would pick out then are if she's researching and she's gathering information, knowledge, and potentially even creating like serums or something to help cure this
mhm,
decline, then to me that suggests it could be more in the realm of understanding or in
mhm,
the realm of creation.
mhm,
Um, and the way that you could play with this being a focal point for the initial want is this drive to either understand what this condition is will be halted halfway through when maybe in this story she discovers that like she can't help him in the way that she's been trying to. Like she can't um the way that she's been trying to understand this illness, it doesn't function in that way. Or whatever she's been trying to create fails to work, depending on whatever direction you go. And if she's creating something that fails halfway through, then she needs to switch gears and do something else.
mhm,
Um, but that's my suggestion would be think about what her character best reflects as an initial want. And honestly, I think that it would either be in the realm of understanding or creation
mhm,
based off of the fact that you have her as a researcher. Like that's someone who's a researcher is driving for knowledge and information, as opposed to if you have it focusing more on protection, then what you would be expecting is maybe she's shielding her brother from other people testing him, which could work. It just might
mhm,
be a little bit more difficult. And I think that with this first book, I sort of feel like protection might be your final, but I'll get there in a second. I got excited about that. I totally agree. Identity is your developing need. You have her discovering something about herself and then her fighting against that existence of who she is.
mhm,
Um, this is the thing that you get to play with as the story develops. The more that she leans into whatever this new thing is that she is, she'll more than often be rewarded as the story progresses. As opposed to when she pushes against it, she refuses this mentally enhanced status that she has, and she refuses to use these abilities. She'll probably will lose something.
mhm,
And based off your scenes, it sounds like whenever she refuses to do certain things, she, often ends up in more trouble.
mhm.
So that's a really good indicator to me that you have a developing identity need.
I
Um,
love that. Yeah, thank you.
yeah. And by knowing the reason I'm kind of hitting these is by knowing this, we can
Mhm,
play with how other characters interact with her and how they can help drive her through the story or
mhm,
pull her back. And then also we can play with how the scenes are expected. Like it's really easy to boil things down to if her developing need is identity, then when a scene doesn't work, is she leaning into her identity or is she pulling away from her identity? And then maybe that'll help you decide how that scene should play out.
mhm,
So that's why I like to kind of talk about these. Um, here's my suggestion and or I guess how I've interpreted your map for arc three.
mhm,
Um, you have her rescuing her brother. She's giving into her full identity, but really this is rescuing. Um, you're setting the grounds for her being this kind of like heroic aspect. She's sort of potentially shedding away this old aspect of either this need to create something or this need to understand something, and she's taking up this role of rescue, role of like
mhm,
protection. So to me, that suggests that in this book, it might be protection.
mhm. Yeah,
And
I can
then
see. Mhm,
and then because I feel like participation, if the story were to continue and you're really working on a means for them to be a community, and that's sort of like your final thing, that would probably be, in one of the future books as like a final thing. Instead of her rescuing, we've got this everyone coming together, sort of like if you really want it to be big, it could be Avengers style. Everyone's at her side, everyone's an equal, and they as a community are facing off against something.
Hmm.
But that's how you could play with how that participation role would really heighten up. And I think that as a story flow, like you have it mapped out here, it's just how you want to focus on that. So how I would look at this is before Act 3, maybe she fails a lot at protecting people. She doesn't get that opportunity. It's because she doesn't have full grasp of who she is as a person that she
Hmm.
fails at protecting people
Hmm.
until she gives in to that identity and then she can protect.
Hmm. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And then because I have the formula, but then I like to rewrite things to how my brain likes them.
Hmm.
Um, I have a suggestion here of like you cannot protect the ones you love until you understand the truth and how you fit into that truth.
Hmm.
Um, and that could be something that you use to sort of drive your headspace when the story is being written. What are your thoughts?
I love all this. This all resonates true for me for this story. Because I think in Act One, Nora is trying to protect her brother from the future memory decline, and she's not
Mm-hmm.
succeeding. She doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
understand what the problem is. But then she goes through, Act Two. She's fighting her identity, and so she's failing at protecting people because she's not embracing who she is. And then Act Three, then she does have to then accept that she is who she is and use her abilities then to protect and rescue her brother. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. And it's really good that you have that grasp at the beginning where she's trying to protect her brother by means of like either understanding what this illness is or creating something, whichever one you want to play with there.
Hmm.
But it's really like she's failing. She's failing at protecting him because she is looking at it through her researcher eyes and she's not even paying attention to the fact that like there is something about her that is unique and different that she needs to give in to before she
Hmm.
can truly protect others.
Hmm.
So yeah, 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 yeah. Um, now when we go to talk about characters, I know that we have a lot of noted engines here, but I want to take a step back.
Okay.
Um, and I want to talk about engines and anchors and just make sure that we're kind of both on the same playing ground here.
Okay.
Um, for me, and I think that I mean this is what Dialogue Doctor Community used to say that an anchor takes them to like the worst version of themselves. But I think
Hmm.
that we're trying to move away from saying worst version as opposed to saying original or starting version of the story.
Hmm.
And so any character that would put her in the headspace of maybe feeling like she can't protect someone or feeling like she needs to be forced into this broader understanding or into creation, but really putting her back in her researcher role
Hmm.
is probably going to be an anchor in this story, as opposed to someone that is driving her to be more forefront, more of a guardian and or protector. So
Hmm.
at any point that a character probably drives her back into like this reclusive, like these are extremes, but like, if you're a researcher, more than likely those traits would be like reclusive, focused on work. You're not in the forefront of the activities. You're kind of doing the work behind the scenes, as opposed to when you're in this guardianship role, you're more in that active forefront. Have more danger in front of you, and so the
Hmm.
people that drive her towards that are going to be your engines in this story, and the
Hmm.
people that pull her back into that researcher need to shield off who she currently is to focus on this bit are there going to be her anchors.
Mm. Okay.
With that said, is there anyone here that you feel might do that?
Possibly. Well, so her brother Noah
Mm-hmm.
might be an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
He's not around for much of the story though because he's been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in Act One, she's surrounded by a lot of anchors, and then
Hmm.
now she's in a new place. Everybody's wanting her to succeed because they view her as an asset to their community where she is
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So I'm not sure. She'll have access to talk to Jessica, who's her friend, her best friend, and her research partner. So she would
Yeah,
be she's
I think
definitely would be a good one to be an anchor at this
I
point in
would
the
agree with
story.
that.
And
Yeah.
then if she, and then if she's able to talk to Liam, who's also back home, he would definitely be an anchor. So he doesn't want
Hmm.
her putting herself out there in any way.
Hmm. I would, yeah. And the way that you describe that, though, you have Nora put into a space where a lot of strong engines are around her, encouraging her to move forward.
Hmm.
But it almost sounds like you put her there when she's not ready to be there, which is a good thing because
Hmm.
what that does is it puts that internal like I'm not as good as they want me to be. And so
Hmm.
you're turning her internal self, if you
Hmm.
want to argue, you're turning her internal self into an anchor who's
Hmm.
telling herself that she's not good enough to do that, um I can't be the person that everyone around me wants me to be. And that's a great story to tell. It's you don't have to have some external person that's like, you're terrible, or
Hmm.
like you need to be, doing research stuff or whatever. You don't need that in this like act two if you have that sort of, especially an identity struggle, because when you're talking about developing identity, there's a ton of internal conflict with who am I and are these people that are encouraging me to be this version? Is that
Hmm.
true to me? Like you have so many questions
Yeah.
around like, is this okay? That I think this works based off of what I can see here.
Hmm. Okay,
So
cool.
I know that that basically answers your question about your uh your engines,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think it could work. Is there any like deep dive here that you want to sort of hit?
Um, okay, so the subplot is a romance between
Hmm.
Nora and Emil Brayson. I
Okay.
don't know if I have Brayson on the list there. Yeah, yeah, that's him, Emil, at the top of the page. Um, but their romance, like their arc is going to cover the trilogy. That's my
Hmm.
plan anyway. So it's a very slow burn.
Hmm.
And they're starting off in very different places. So they don't, there's like a interest and an attraction, I think, there, but each of them for their own reasons don't want to pursue it. So I'm just trying to work out in my own head, like, what should the arc look like for this book one? Like, I'm just wondering how far to take.
Right. Is how well do they know each other before the book starts?
They didn't know each other at all. So
Gotcha.
they'd met day one of the story.
Hmm. So and it's a slow burn subplot romance.
Hmm.
Where do you want them to end up in this trilogy, right?
Hmm.
Where do you want them to end up in book three?
Um, what are the options? I just
Married?
oh, I see. I see. Okay. No,
Um, yeah, so like, do you want them married? Do you want them just coupled? Do you want one of them, you know, are these, I'm sorry, just double checking. Are we
mhm.
biological male, female, just confirming,
They
or
are. Yeah.
yeah, so like expecting, like where do you want them to be by the end of book three?
That's a great question. Definitely, well, together as in happily ever after, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
happy for now. So I can say
Mm-hmm.
that. I that's I think I was thinking that they would just be starting to date at the end of book three, like they
Okay.
finally cleared through all the pathways, all the hurdles and barriers, and then they felt free that they could then pursue a relationship. I think is what I was thinking of.
Yeah, so then how I would probably do it is this first book is really them meeting each other, having awkward conversations, and maybe suggesting that there's something more there by the flirty banter between the two.
Mhm.
And then the second book, you could have the first kiss. Um, you could have like one of them kind of divulging more information. In the first one, you could probably have that as well, where um, one of them confides something personal to the other. But then in the second one, I would probably expect like first kiss kind of thing happening around then.
Mhm.
Um, and then the third one, more indication that they're together more, that they can official or they can call it official by the end of it if that's where you want it to be.
Mhm.
But yeah, just sort of those like slow burn
Mhm.
hits. We did, I say we because it's co-written, but in the Leah Ackerman series, we have our main character have a really slow burn romance. It's just meant to be a side plot. Um, add depth to certain characters, and really that's sort of the steps that we followed. Is, they first meet each other in this first book. um we get the perspective of our vehicle character, and she's like, yeah, I like this guy, like, why not, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
okay. But they don't have their first kiss until the second book, and they kind of divulge more information about each other in those books, and like they go through a lot together that
Mhm.
brings them to these points. um these two characters can like push on each other to be better people too. And
Mhm.
so you'd probably have like something along the lines of one character um really encouraging the other character to be their best version.
Mhm. Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
great. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Because I didn't really want to do an enemies to lovers sort of
yeah, yeah.
situation. And yeah,
You
okay.
don't
Thank
have
you. That's
to.
helpful.
um Anyone else you want to dive into?
Um, no, some of these characters are, well, okay. If you want to, could you,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Bia is a jaguar. So she's
Hmm.
a mind reading jaguar. And she's very, I picture her as being, she's kind of fearsome, right? So if she wants to scare a person, she can definitely scare a person. But I view her as, she's pretty spontaneous, and she has this, Emil is her partner.
Hmm.
um, and she loves to keep him on his toes, and she feels like he's too serious, and so she likes to withhold information just to get him, wrong-footed.
Hmm.
So I didn't know if you had any, first off, I think I characterized her as a hazard because I think when she's around, she's not always around, but when she is around, she's always pushing for some change, between
Hmm.
Nora and Brayson, or something along those lines. So would you agree that she's a hazard, or?
um how, when you say she's not around often, what does that mean?
Well, I'm halfway through the book and Nora's met her twice, if
Okay.
that
And
helps.
so it's tough because hazards function as like tertiary characters, and a lot of the
Mm.
examples used are usually characters that they meet once.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Here you have Bia is linked to another person. Isn't
Mhm,
more than like you can put them as a hazard. That's fair. The Jaguar functions as a uh agent of chaos
mhm.
that forces that forces a trial. Um, I think that that works as long as it makes sense in your head.
Sure.
Otherwise, I would
Mhm,
probably put them as an anchor if they're used more often. I would
mhm,
say hazard leaning on an anchor.
mhm,
Um, Especially as like an agent of chaos, I can't imagine that Nora would come out of those situations like feeling confident.
mhm. Okay. Okay.
Anyone
Yes,
else you want to dive into?
I think so for like plotting out the scenes for the rest of the book, I have like
Mm-hmm.
a rough outline
Mm-hmm.
um that and so some of those characters I could see that they might change based on the needs of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um but basically all I have can I kind of like run through the outline for the rest of the story because I was working on this today and it's
Yeah, yeah.
pretty succinct. Um, so Nora's at the place where she's being forced to confront, like where I am in the book, she's being forced to confront what she started to fear, right? That she somehow
Mm-hmm.
has been enhanced and she thinks that
Mm-hmm.
Xander's the cause. And she's horrified by this. So she does end up making a deal with with the people that she's with on the farm. If they help her to rescue her brother, then they can make their case to Noah. And if they convince
Mm-hmm.
her brother to help them, then she'll help them as well with, within however she feels comfortable doing. So that's the deal that she makes. So then, at first she's only willing to train her mental defenses. And so there's that first training montage
Yep.
that's pretty lackluster. And then they go and make their first attempt at rescuing her brother. And Nora fails. She does come face to face with Xander, and um, she she kind of tips her hand that she is mentally enhanced as well, which means that now she's on the run as well. So she's on the run with some of the some of the people that she's with on the farm. Um, and she's trying to train again with in her original morality. So still not embracing her identity. They make a
Mm-hmm.
second attempt to rescue Noah. This time either she tries to use her ability or she doesn't. But either way, I think somebody is probably either seriously hurt or dies. Then
Yeah.
she has the dark night of the soul, and she has to accept that she is a mind controller and learn how to and 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 accept that she has to learn how to use that ability to save her brother. So then there's the last training montage. They have one last chance to rescue him because he's being taken to the Empire. Um, and so Nora forces herself to train. So she's not really embracing her identity, but she's trying to.
Yeah.
And in the final confrontation of the book, she manages to surprise Xander, the person who kidnapped her brother, finds a way to inhibit his ability for long enough for them to get Noah away. But but Xander then programs the nanobots that's in Noah's brain to give him a compulsion to present himself to the Empress. So the book ends there, where they have rescued Noah, but but Noah isn't really free. And
Mm-hmm.
Nora has kind of embraced her identity to the point where she could use the ability. The other big part is that their father actually has been living a double life. And throughout book one, Nora's been getting hints that her dad isn't who she thought he was. And he is, by the end of this book, he's missing. And I don't know whether to reveal in this book or in book two, but he's actually been captured by the Empire as well. So he is back in the capital of the Empire.
Okay. All that works. If your question is,
Okay.
does that work? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Um, I think one thing that you could play with
Mhm.
to like vary it up with the like we have a training montage, we try to go in, but she's refusing this identity aspect.
Mhm.
The one that really caught my attention was the one where someone gets seriously hurt or injured.
Mhm.
In that one, what you could do is have her reach a point where she has to give in a little bit to that identity, but she's not strong enough. She fails miserably because she's not giving in to her true identity because she hasn't practiced with this. And so
Mhm.
what that does is it moves her a little bit further on the needle. It also changes up what that scene could look like. because someone may get seriously injured or die because of the fact that she's not giving in. And even when she did for a split second, it wasn't enough because she didn't do enough, like she didn't train enough. And so it's a lot like it becomes this conflict of like, I tried to give in, but I failed. And so, like, did I fail because I'm just not good? Did I fail because I haven't practiced enough? But like, it starts to open up this question as to
Mm-hmm.
will she use it or not? And so that one really suggested like a way to vary it up because
Mm-hmm.
then in the next training montage she could still refuse to do it, but people could say, look, you have to figure out this thing, like you can't just ignore it. So then maybe she starts to use it, but you know, like just have her resist, but yet still be open to the option to using this ability.
Okay.
Like maybe she tries to justify when she can use it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think. What do you have a specific question that you would like within that arc?
Um, no, that seems pretty clear. Um, and I like what you said about that moment where she does give in, and now there's a new doubt. Is it because she hasn't
Hmm.
trained, or is it because she's just not strong enough, and she never would be strong
Hmm.
enough? So now she has a new fear where she has this way that she could protect her brother, but then is it even going to be enough, even if she did train it? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
more tension.
Yeah, exactly. And it what it does with the whole development part of the hypothesis is um especially on the identity need being developed is you have a failure and it's because she gives in but she's not fully giving in, so it's a mixture of like a misunderstanding straight into failure,
Mm,
um, because later on she's going to misinterpret some of that, I would assume. You know, am I not strong enough? Is that why? But really, that's just full misunderstanding of she doesn't know how to use the ability. She hasn't trained to use it whatsoever.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, that's just like another way to play up with how her identity develops.
mhm. Okay.
Uh, you also sent me scene summaries. Um,
Mm.
and I gave my 2 cents on what types of scenes I see these as or what they could
Ah,
be
okay.
as.
Mhm.
Hopefully to help you. And if they don't, ignore them. But the idea behind them is maybe it will help in what your focus is for that scene. Um, other than straight up hero's journey. This becomes a little bit more granular. You can sort of identify what certain scenes are in between those big points in the hero's journey.
Mm,
Um, like chapter 30, you have crossing the threshold. Agreed. That's what that scene really functions as.
mhm,
It doesn't necessarily need to have a like extra definition to it. But then we have Nora being arrested. That would probably be some type of failure and or resistance because you're being arrested.
mhm,
And so you can really focus on those feelings of failure or uh trying to resist. And so we have this like pushing back of Nora but then being forced into capture. Both of them work in terms of hypothesis when you were talking about like a failure of this and this being, what is this, like between 30 and 50% of the book.
uh, well, actually, I think I'm halfway through the book, around chapter 45, which I know is super long, so I'm gonna have
It
to
is what it is.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I
Okay,
think that's
so
the
yeah,
halfway
this is
point
like your
there.
big, would be like your halfway mark, getting close to something that would be like a bad moment, or midway point usually is considered like the quote unquote death point. So someone
Mm,
might die or some big emotional thing might happen or some shift in it. For the hypothesis, this might be nearing a moment where she is starting, or she has reached a point where it's time to let go of those old notions where she had started from, and really hone in and focus on the identity need, without the past of the either understanding or creation.
Mm,
Um, so that could be like a moment where either uh let's just say it's understanding, and it's been this attempt to understand this illness and this disease, and maybe at this point halfway through the story it's like trying to understand what I've been working on for so long
mhm,
intermixed with who I am now as a new person is not working. That's too
mm,
many things for me to focus on. And I need to let go that I may never be able to heal my brother the way that I thought I could. But if I can understand who I am a little bit more, maybe then I can protect him. Like that
mhm,
sort of question that comes out of this moment.
mm,
Um, that could be like a what I would perceive as like a midway point. Doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen here, but that's what I would perceive
mm.
as like um okay, so then knowing that,
And may I ask a quick question about that?
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, so that's different from the Dark Night of the Soul?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
um this you see this a lot in movies. About halfway through the movie something happens that's like an emotional shift, and it's not a dark night of the soul, because we still got some bad things that are going to happen,
Mhm,
but there is something that happens right in the middle. I read Writing from the Middle. I don't remember the author's name and I apologize, but it's a good book. And really it talks about a death, a death either being a physical death, a psychological death, or an emotional death. And it's something that happens around the middle that really shifts a character's perspective and moves them forward through the story. When we talk about in terms of like story hypothesis,
mhm,
um, this could be the moment where we it's like every thought that I had left my brain, but this could be the moment of the story where the character finally says who I was at the beginning of the story is not going to get me where I need to be. And
mm,
now I need to really double down and focus on who I need to be in order to become this better version of myself. I
mhm,
will I want to say if you think about something like The Matrix, is of course the only thing in my head that I can think of, um, when they capture Morpheus and he dies, I think he dies. Yeah. Well, regardless, yeah, he's captured. I believe he dies. I don't know why I've forgotten that, but it's halfway through the story, and it
mm,
really is just like I can't. I have to accept or I have to believe that what Morpheus was fighting for was me. And that even though I don't understand the Matrix, which was the initial want, I now need to put some faith in the fact that someone died for me for a reason. And now
mm,
I need to double down on who I am, because that is like that was the whole point of this. And if I don't do that, then his death means nothing. And
mm,
so now we kind of move forward in the story, and then we start getting closer to what the Dark Night of the Soul is, which is when um Neo is in the Matrix and he is getting attacked by Agent Smith. He dies. The Sentinels are ripping into the ship and they're about to take everybody. Like that's the Dark Knight. Like everything's getting real bad right then. And so in movie terms, like this all happens really quick. He ends up getting resurrected, and then he can take care of it with the ultimate showdown. But there is the Dark Knight right when he basically is at his ultimate low. He is going to die. He's going to fail all of his friends because they're all stuck in the ship. But those two moments are big pivotal moments. We've got the midpoint where it shifts to like why am I doing this, and then we've got that dark night later.
mm. Makes sense. Okay.
Okay. I hope you can apply that here.
Yes, yes.
um
To think about it, but yes,
yeah, it's one of those things to ponder. But
Mhm.
and maybe it's something that you come back to after you've written everything. Especially, I mean, there's no shame in having a long, many chaptered book. Especially in terms of like the sci-fi realm. So don't feel like this is too long. It's not. You're
Mm.
fine.
Okay. Thank you.
But if you want it shorter, maybe that's when you go in and you check and you see like where these little posts are that you're hitting.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any questions before I hop back into this?
No, no questions. No.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so we talked about this failure resistance. Um, here, Nora learns a little bit about who she is. She's grasping the situation, and this could be some sort of like a reflection, in terms of like who am I? Think internal introspection moment, especially because we've got a little bit of unconscious moment, a little bit of someone
Mhm.
helping her, but then she's learning more about her. Like this is very like reflective, internal kind
Mhm.
of. Um, this one is a potential for some bit of transformation, or more than likely just a trial, some obstacle to overcome. Um, where we have her waking up in the back of a wagon. I don't know why I said it that way, but I did. um, and she's being transported and lying amidst the cargo. So it's a lot about movement here. Um, I would probably put this more in like the trial realms.
Mhm.
Um, this one I marked as misunderstanding. Just trying to grab where merchant caravan is waiting for the escort. Um, Oh, because we've got misunderstanding of like who is a criminal and all of these bits.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, we can. Yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, hopefully when you go to look through this, like here, confrontation. When I'm looking at this and I'm thinking of it being a confrontation, then when I go to focus on the writing this scene, I'm going to focus on developing probably Nora's voice,
Mhm.
probably some way for her to stand up for something. We've got people who are making choices in this scene. So they're probably making them sort of difficult choices that they need to do. So there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of things to think about, as opposed to certain trial scenes, especially physical trial scenes, we can probably
Mhm.
spend more time talking about the environment, talking about how strenuous certain things are.
Mhm.
Um, Transformation scenes are way more internal. Um, when we're talking about a character understanding aspects about themselves and sort of like leveling up mentally, it's a very internal build up moment. And so you if you focus a little bit more on that during these scenes, like that gives us a different perspective. So that's why I marked them these ways. You disagree, then disagree and pick a way that you would like it, but
Mhm.
hopefully that helps you
Mm.
in
Yes. Yeah.
writing. Um, do you have any questions there?
I don't think so. No, no. The sort of thing I'll have to like reflect on, um, as I'm going through
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
writing
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. But yeah, no, it all seems pretty clear. Thank you.
Okay. So, in terms of questions that you had for me,
Mhm.
did I hit them? Did you want to
Yes.
dive a little bit more into any of them? Just to kind of see how we're doing.
Um, I don't know. Like, well, do you think I have too many people on the farm? I don't know. Probably,
How do
yeah.
you how it's a good question. Um, the bigger
I
question is how do you feel writing multiple characters? You asked that question for a reason, and I'm
Yes.
curious.
Yes, the reason is because I have a habit of putting too many people into a scene.
Hmm.
So that's my tendency is to put too many people in a scene and wanting to really flesh out the world and the environment. So I'm envisioning the farm. There's going to be a number of people there, and I'm just going to not even name, like I'm not even going to name
Yeah.
people, right? Just kind of,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess I'm I'm uncertain how to put it into words, but well, like for instance, okay, so Leo and Dominic,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering,
Mm-hmm.
are they distinct enough or should I merge them to be one character? So Dominic in my story, Dominic is Leo's right-hand man. Leo
Mm-hmm.
was the Guardian Guild Master until he was deposed recently. And so Dominic went with them or he was pushed out as well. Doesn't make a difference. But anyways, they're both out now. Leo,
Mm-hmm.
I have he's been wounded by this, his self-esteem. So he's depressed and wanting to spend a lot of time alone. So I kind of envision like a little arc for him also through the trilogy. And then Dominic is the one who's really stepped up to take charge of this community that's forming. So I have them as, in my mind, they're distinct, but I'm just wondering if you have, if you have any intuitions just based on what you know of my story, if you feel like I should merge
So
them or not.
I I fall between these two because I like merging people if I think they're too close to each other.
Mhm.
Um, I did notice you saying that Leo is more of a loner type person, but then Dominic being a right-hand man. Um,
When they were in the guild, yeah, up until a few months ago. Yeah,
okay,
he
so
was the
then they
right
were
hand
kind
man.
of pushed away.
Yeah.
One sort of, okay, okay. And honestly, if they're distinct enough in your head,
Hmm.
keep them distinct. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Um, what I would say though is if upon revision
Hmm.
you notice that they are way too similar,
Hmm.
that uh honestly it could just be the same person, maybe it becomes the same person. And that's
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
So the reason I don't want to push one way or the other is because their voices will, like, you have them distinct in your mind. So in
Hmm.
that case, you can play around with the fact that there are two separate people. I
Hmm.
have in I mean, in Nerds, we had a massive cast of characters, all
Hmm.
with distinct voices, and we would have scenes where like all of them were there, and that's a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I would say that there's no harm in having this a lot of people on this farm and maybe Nora interacting with a couple at a time. If you don't
Hmm.
feel comfortable writing big cast scenes, then
Hmm.
have Nora be the kind of person that doesn't like being around a ton of people, that
Uh-huh.
she will wait for Leo to come out of whatever room he's in and she'll
Hmm.
pull him to the side, and then they'll have a conversation. Or like she can see several people, but maybe she goes and talks to one of them, and then the rest are just sort of um, present. Maybe they have a couple things that they need to say, but she's very direct at who she's talking to because
Hmm.
maybe that's part of her persona. Um, that is a way for you to um, negate doing big cast scenes if you don't feel like you're ready to write those yet.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that when I read through these characters, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so many. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? Like, it's totally fine. We had
Okay.
in the Leah Ackerman series that we have like 10 people. I don't remember math. 9 people in a house that kind of live together. Um, more or less. Of those 9 people, we had, because this was YA, Paranormal Academy. We
Hmm.
had we basically had mean girls. So we
Hmm.
had one main queen bee, and then we had her 2 lackeys. Um, and so more or less, we had the one main person that was always snotty towards them, and then the other 2 were just around her, and they would, say their little quips around them like you would expect in any other, movie or whatever.
Hmm.
We had the love interest, we had the 2 best friends of the main character, and then a couple other characters that functioned as like comedic um tertiary characters, and then the teacher. They all sort of had their little role to play. They all interconnected with each other, but there were many of them that just functioned as lived in characters, just backdrop characters.
Mhm.
We mentioned that they were over there, and then we had the conversation that was pertinent to this scene or whatever. Um, so I don't know if you're intending to write like big cast conversation scenes or not. But I think that in terms of the question of like, do I have too many characters?
Mhm.
No, I
Mhm.
think you're okay.
Okay.
That that help?
Okay, good. Phew. I'm attached to my characters.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're attached to them for a reason, right?
Mm.
I think that as long as it's not stopping you from writing the first draft, then
Mhm.
write the first draft with all
Mhm.
these characters.
Mhm.
If upon revision you realize that two characters are so similar that maybe it's time they get squished together, that's the
Yeah,
time to worry about it. You kill your
sure.
darlings on edit. So, yeah, I honestly like I wouldn't have that hold you back. I would just
Mhm.
go for the story you want to tell first.
Mhm. Okay.
Make sure you get that written.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Um, well, I guess one final question is, so there's there's a mystery through
Hmm.
this trilogy about Nora's background and how she came to be and what the whole story is. Do you have any tips for pacing the revelations?
Okay. Can are you okay telling me what the revelation is?
Well, yeah, yes, I'm fine with telling you
Okay.
any of it. Yes, it's just that there's a lot. Like I have this whole backstory, like how everything came to be. But what Laura needs to learn is that she and her brother and a handful of other people were genetically modified in a lab,
Hmm.
and that that the material that came, like there's a third Earth that's involved that will come into
Hmm.
play in book 3. So she needs to learn, like, like about her parentage, like where the DNA came from,
Hmm.
why she was created, and why she's been protected on Earth when the rest of her siblings have not been protected, and just so on and so forth. It's like a whole long
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
story, but
So one, it's really that that makes me really wonder if the initial one of creation is a interesting one to play with. So I would just play with that idea because if
Mhm,
she's created and she has a need for creation, that's kind
mhm,
of a fun thing to consider.
mhm,
Um, but regardless of that, how developing the story, we have her discovering that she's unique, that she is modified somehow in this first book, and that she is protecting of her brother. But even though she's giving into an identity here of being modified, she doesn't have the full truth as to what
mhm.
that means.
Yes.
That means that in book two, where most people are like the most nervous to write book two because it's the middle and like what's going to happen here, this is perfect for you. This is the
Mhm,
perfect opportunity for you because this is the quest to understand more,
mhm,
the quest to uncover information, go places that she can have these additional revelations. I would probably hit um the fact that she is one of many who are genetically modified in book two,
mhm,
if I were writing this.
mhm,
And then um the discovery early on in book three that she was like, or maybe at the end of book two, that she was the only one protected because now she needs to go and protect the rest of them, or whatever she needs to do. If that's the case, I don't know. But
mhm, mhm,
sort of this like end of book two is this realization that she's one of many, but for some reason, even then, she was the one picked. what the hell does that mean? And so now we've
Mhm.
got this journey and discovery for book three.
Mhm.
Um, so you said like parentage and heritage, and really you have, if the case of participation is intended for the end of this series, where
Mhm.
what kind of community are you thinking for Nora? Like, what is that like coming together community? Is that all of the genetically modified humans?
Well, um, so from a participation standpoint, I was thinking primarily of her protecting her home world because
Mm-hmm.
she's uniquely qualified to do so. So on her Earth, nobody, on Earth, nobody is genetically enhanced in this way. And on Kara is Terra, this other Earth where she is now is it's sort of the subject of it's been experimented on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the third Earth where everybody is inherently a mind controller.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to cure a disease on that planet, and so they're using Terra to run experiments. And then out of that, Nora came to have her abilities, and end up on Earth with her father. So I was thinking that Nora's participation would be more of protecting her home world, but building a community between the three Earths. Because right now this Earth knows nothing of the other two, and then where she is now, they're at odds with the third Earth, so they're
Mm-hmm.
very hostile to each other. So I want Nora to help the others to build bridges between the three. Not that it's going to
Gotcha.
be happily ever after, but I want it to be better.
Right, but this drive to build this connection
Hmm.
and this form of communication between each other.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, okay. I'm trying to put the pieces together.
Hmm.
I think having that book two really focusing on these revelations as to like who she is and filling in some of the gaps of like if she doesn't know anything about like the planets or the extra planet, maybe then is the discovery, or if that's like a bigger reveal, you could always put that in the third one and then it's like a race to get there.
Hmm.
Um, and that could be like your third book. Um, the parentage, I think a lot can be discovered in book two, to be
Hmm.
honest. I think
Hmm.
that book two really would function as like your quest to gain knowledge and information, because you have this first one is understanding of oneself. And then you have like the second one is like understanding the broader ramifications of who she is and others like her.
Hmm.
And then you have the drive to participation. So you'd probably have in this one the development of identity, in book two the development of understanding, and in book three the development of participation. And you'd probably have protection as like your true and final need for book three as well, which is fine. It's a big, huge protection, but
Hmm.
you would have that development of building bridges and all of these things of participation in book three, which I think really hones in on what your uh, overall goal is to have this like she function as this connector. And then focusing on understanding in the book two to really hit a lot of the points
Hmm.
so that she can start doing stuff to get everyone connected again.
Hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
All
thank you.
right. Um, okay. That was a lot. I hope to help.
Yes.
Um, and I think we'll end the recording here.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, let me just hit a button or two.